Right now, something could happen on the other side of the planet, and before you finish this sentence, you could know about it. A war starts, a volcano erupts, a king dies. Your phone lights up and the news is already there. But for most of human history, that was impossible. A person could die 50 miles away. An army could invade the next valley. An entire city could fall, and you might not find out for weeks or ever. So how did news travel across the ancient world when nobody could send it directly? The first thing to understand is that ancient news did not travel like a modern alert. It traveled like a person. Somebody heard something, remembered it, and carried it somewhere else. For the oldest societies, that usually meant oral transmission. A traveler, a merchant, a hunter, a messenger, or a visitor from another group arrived and told what they had seen. If the story was important enough, it got repeated. If it was memorable enough, it spread. If it was useful enough, people kept passing it on. That sounds simple, but it was a real information system. In a world without paper in most places, without reliable roads, without clocks, and without public broadcasts, the human voice was the fastest tool available. News could move through families, camps, villages, markets, and trade stops one conversation at a time. And because people often repeated what they heard to others who were not there, the message could change as it moved. Some details sharpened, others blurred, and sometimes the story became more powerful than the original event. That is one reason travelers mattered so much. If you moved between communities, you did more than carry goods. You carried information. A potter, a trader, a pilgrim, or a seasonal migrant might bring news from a region far beyond the listener's experience. In that sense, trade routes were also information routes. Goods were one reason to travel, but rumors, warnings, prices, conflicts, alliances, and new ideas moved along the same paths. Ancient marketplaces were especially important. They were not just places to buy and sell. They were places to hear things. You could learn where the water was, which road was safe, what a ruler decreed, whether a neighboring region was at war, or whether a harvest had failed. News did not need a formal newsroom to spread. It needed people who met other people. And the busier the crossroads, the faster information could move. But people alone were not always enough. As societies grew larger, they began building faster and more reliable ways to send messages. One of the oldest solutions was simple signaling. Fire on a hill, smoke in daylight, horns, drums, flags. Sound and sight could move a warning faster than a runner in the right conditions, especially when a message had to cross open terrain or alert nearby groups to danger. That is why some of the oldest communication systems were not designed for conversation at all. They were designed for urgency. Enemy coming, fire, gather, move. In many places, a signal did not carry a full story. It carried a headline. The message was short, but the consequences could be enormous. Once people knew something was happening, they could send a person to explain the rest. At a larger scale, rulers and states tried to make news more dependable by using messengers. An official courier was different from an ordinary traveler because the message itself became part of the job. The person did not just happen to bring information. They were sent for that exact purpose. Some empires built relay systems, where one messenger would hand off the message to another so that the original sender's news could move faster than any single person could travel alone. This was an early form of infrastructure. The message was the thing being moved, and the network around it made that movement possible. Roads helped, way stations helped, horses helped, trusted officials helped. The better the system, the farther and faster news could go. By the time major states were fully organized, communication was no longer only personal, it was political. Whoever controlled the flow of information could control armies, taxes, diplomacy, and public order. Writing changed everything again. A spoken message depended on memory, but a written message could be carried, stored, copied, and verified. That made it especially useful for official news. Decrees, laws, announcements, treaties, tribute records, military orders, and reports. Writing did not replace speech, it extended it. A message could now outlive the speaker and travel beyond the sound of a human voice. Still, writing had a limit. It was slower to produce, slower to copy, and not everyone could read it. So even in literate societies, most people still learn news through a mixture of forms. A written order might be read aloud. An inscription might be placed in a public space. A letter might be delivered by messenger and then explained verbally. In other words, ancient communication was rarely one thing. It was a chain of things. That chain is what made news both powerful and fragile. The farther it traveled, the more chances it had to be delayed, altered, misunderstood, or weaponized. If you received information secondhand, you had to decide whether to trust it. That problem is older than newspapers, radios, and the internet. Ancient people already lived with questions like, who said this? Who carried it? Did they see it themselves? Why are they telling me now? So the ancient world built trust around messengers, not just methods. A known rider, a respected herald, a state courier, a merchant with a reputation, a neighbor who had come from the next settlement. Credibility was part of communication. If the person delivering the message was unreliable, the news was unreliable too. In that way, ancient news was never just about information. It was about social trust. And that trust had limits. Some news traveled quickly only inside an elite network, while ordinary people heard it much later. Some messages were public, while others were private. Some stories spread because they were useful, others spread because they were shocking, and some spread because people simply could not stop repeating them. Ancient rumor was already alive, which means misinformation is not a modern invention, it is a human one. We even see this in formal systems. Ancient governments used heralds to proclaim royal decrees aloud, runners to carry letters, roads to speed delivery, and ships to move messages across water. In places where roads were good, information moved more efficiently. In places where road systems were weaker, the messenger mattered even more. A letter could travel from one major center to another and still need a person to explain what it meant to everyone else. The ancient world made this especially visible. Roads, relay stations, couriers, and official communication systems let news spread farther and faster than in many earlier societies. But even then, the system was uneven. Government messages could move with support and resources, while ordinary people still depended on acquaintances, travelers, and chance encounters to hear what was happening. When you put all of this together, the ancient world starts to look less disconnected than it first appears. News moved through people, then through trade, then through signals, then through couriers, then through writing, and eventually through organized state systems that could reach farther and faster than ever before. Every improvement built on the one before it. The same human instinct was underneath all of it, the need to know what was happening beyond the edge of your own life. And that is the real answer to the question. Ancient news traveled because people needed it to travel. They needed to know where danger was, where opportunity was, who had power, what had changed, and whether the world outside their own settlement was becoming safe or deadly. The technology changed, the routes changed, the speed changed, but the purpose stayed the same. Today, your phone tells you everything immediately. You barely notice the miracle, but for most of human history, knowing what happened somewhere else was an achievement. It took memory, trust, movement, and time. A message might cross a valley, a kingdom, or a continent on foot, horseback, ship, smoke, drum, or writing tablet. It might arrive late, it might arrive wrong, but it still arrived. And before there were headlines, there were humans carrying words.